Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are playing Fire Crit Warpath Paladin. Yes, I've finally gotten around to playing with it. Well, before the Path of Exile season started, I actually rolled an Eye of Rain with melee attack speed on it, so I was inclined to play the build, but of course, I got busy. So now we're kind of making up for lost time. Now, before we get into the video, I'd heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as there will be more Last Epoch content like this, and it's the best way of supporting me currently, as I do put in a lot of effort into these videos. Now, the build. TLDR, your Warpath, and you spin to win. That's literally the whole point. Now, there's a lot more complications than just that, sadly, because EHG is not very nice, and they like to nerf everything I ever want to do, ever. So, for some reason, this is just me. I don't know if I'm crazy or something, but it seems like as though with the amount of investment that I have into the character, the damage isn't necessarily that high. Especially because of the adaptive melee change. If you don't know, the adaptive melee change, it made it so that all that base damage on those weapons or fizz damage are all now just adaptive damage. So for instance, if I scale fire damage with my Warpath, I turned it fire, it should all be fire damage. So the flat on my Eye of Rain, that's on the implicit, the flat on my Scepter, that all should be melee fire, right? And I feel like as though we're not getting that. I know, it's just weird. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm doing more damage than I think I'm doing. But overall, I think the build's fine. I'm enjoying it so far. It's just, I've put a lot of investment into it, as you could tell. So I'm just a little confused about it. But yeah, so the kind of like the mechanics of the build is we are using specifically Fire Warpath, right? And we're using Warrior's Fury. Why is that? Well, I am a DPS whore. I like to squeeze out as much damage as I possibly can in every single build I play, and this is no different at all. So normally with a normal Warpath build, you would completely ignore Warrior's Fury and you just spin normally. You can do that, and you can take the 1 point out of Warrior's Fury if you want to. Now, I like doing damage, so that means that I put in a lot more effort to do that damage, and it requires more button pressing. So if you want the AFK friendly version of the build, like I said, disable Warrior's Fury. I'll have a planner down below where it's the AFK less button version, right? But I will say you will still need to spam reversal, as that is a large majority of your damage. So essentially Warrior's Fury, it makes it so that you deal more damage and you channel in a bigger area, but it costs more mana per second. Well, thankfully, we have a lot of ways of dealing with that. Like, for instance, we have a lot of flat minus mana cost inside Warpath, and we also have the minus channel cost helmet. In the gameplay that you're looking at, I do not have a minus channel cost helmet. That would go absolutely wonderful with this build. It would save you so much time of trying to manage your mana. It's just I wasn't able to get one that had good stats on it for this video. So of course, be on the lookout for a minus channel cost helmet. Now, what does this mean? Well, I'm trying to make it so that after about 4 seconds or 8 seconds, right? So my cooldown of my reversal, right, is at 7.7 seconds currently with my current setup. This means that I need to be able to hold down the right click for Warpath for 8 full seconds, right, without stopping, and then reversal, and then be back close to full mana. Thankfully, it turns out if you have enough minus mana cost, and of course the channel cost negative on the helmet, it means that the first like 3 to 4 seconds you're channeling Warpath, you actually don't consume any mana, which is amazing, because that means the next 4 seconds that you're consuming mana, right, is of course recuperated by a reversal, because we're taking the node that makes it so that it puts us back in 2 more seconds in time, meaning it's 4 seconds. Now, of course, that can mess with you sometimes. Going back in time 4 seconds is definitely very, very annoying. You know, you really don't know how long 4 seconds is until either you, get lucky, or in this case, you use reversal into a boss's ability and die. Lord knows I've done that enough on stream already. And like, by the way, twitch.tv is dreadful, by the way, down below. So there's that version, right? Like I said, you could always turn that off and not deal with that. And of course, you have the usual sigils set up. You have Dawn Charge on Lunge, because Dawn Charge is one of the most OP nodes in the game, especially when you're HP stacking like we are, because we're a Paladin. And of course, Holy Aura. Holy Aura was nerfed a little bit because it got a lot less attack speed, and specifically attack speed. It lost a little bit, and I'm a little sad about that, because that was one of the main ways of scaling Warpath is attack speed, but it's like whatever. I got lucky with my Eye of Rain anyways. I also got a Bleeding Heart as well, a really well rolled Bleeding Heart. Early on in the build's like history, like when I was starting it out, I realized that if I'm going to have such a gigantic HP pool like I have currently, right, I'm going to need a lot more leech to make up for that, right, and a lot more damage. So of course I use a Bleeding Heart. Bleeding Heart gives me like 9% damage leech's life. We do get bleeds whenever we cast our sigils or our reversal, but it's such a small margin that it doesn't matter. And as you can tell in the footage, whenever I take a hit, I'm like back up to full instantly, right? Which is great for a build like this. Technically, if you don't have a Bleeding Heart, you can actually invest into a Siphon of Anguish with a 3% melee damage leech's life roll and grab the 5% melee damage leech's life on the tree, in the Void Knight tree, right? So you're good to go there on that regard if you don't have this. Now, one thing I would suggest having for this build, I would suggest having like a +3 to Warpath before you play this build. Sadly, for some dumb and like ridiculous reason, EHG nerfed Wings of Argentus from 40% DR to 20% DR. Now, I have no idea why they did this, because it makes the item completely unusable in most situations, because you can get significantly more damage and tankiness from a rare chest. Now, you must be wondering, well, Dread, if they nerfed it and made it worse, wouldn't they lower the LP level so that, you know, it's easier to get LP on it since the item isn't as OP anymore? No, it's still as rare to get a 1 LP Argentus as it was before. So essentially, Argentus has been kicked off the street. Like, for instance, for reference, like a Titan Heart, right? A stupid Titan Heart has 15% DR and 40% increased life, right? That's insane. Like screw Wings of Argentus. It used to be one of the highest, highest regarded uniques in the entire game, and I think it was an absolute criminal act to nerf it this way, to the point where you don't even want to use it. If you're going to do this, okay, EHG, if you're going to do this and you want to nerf Wings of Argentus, right, all I want you to do is, instead of that increased damage it has, put a more damage modifier on it. Put like 20 to 40% more fire and cold melee damage. Bam, fixes the old item, the whole item, right? It's worth using again. Do that and we'll be clear. With all that being said though, let's go in game, shall we? Sorry for the longer intro. All right, here we are in game with the character. Like I said, Warpath. It's great. Let's talk about the skills, shall we? So the first skill is Warpath. So I think to make this build feel good, I would have a +3. If you did not have a +4 like I do, just take a point out of Unchained. And like I said, if you want to play an AFK friendly Warpath, I would take a point out of Warrior's Fury, take 3 points out of Unchained, and then put more points into either area, movement speed, or maybe even Wave the Executioner, depending on what you're feeling that day. Now, of course, one thing I haven't been able to verify with the devs is if this gets turned into fire damage. If anyone figures that out, please let me know. And if it does get turned into fire damage, is what I would put points into if you do not want to go Warrior's Fury. But overall, this is like the exact setup I would use for Warrior's Fury, because all this minus mana cost makes it so that we have a few seconds with Warrior's Fury first on top of like the channel cost and the relic that we have. Of course, the fire pen with scepter is where we're wearing a scepter, the global base crit chance with the sword, which is wonderful, the 80% more damage while dual wielding, the 45% more against ignited enemies. All of that combined makes Warpath deal enough damage for endgame. Now, for reversal, it's the stereotypical reversal setup other than the fact we're using ancient reversal. Sadly, due to a lot of changes and stuff, reversal got shafted a little bit in terms of its cooldown. Instead of having like a 4-second cooldown with the mana gain backed version, now it's at like an 7.7. If you get some cooldown on your belt, right? I do have some cooldown on my boots, but if you get it on your belt or something, or on your helm or in rings, you can make this way more consistent than what I'm currently playing with. I just did not have the luxury to swap out of my belt because it is a really damn good belt. So yeah, not swapping out of that anytime soon. Sigils, stereotypical setup. I did deem Word of Alacrity a lot better than just grabbing the extra endurance threshold. That is because being able to cast our sigils faster is great for timing and while we're in boss fights and stuff, right? But overall, like I said, bunch of melee flat fire. You get a bunch of flat fire from the base. Of course, Last Wish, so that you get it on kills. When you're in monos, you don't have to cast it. Max out the duration, get the tetragram. The nerf to the armor is very, very easily felt. Thankfully, currently, I have significantly more armor investment than you'd normally have on a paladin, so it essentially makes up for that. We're a very tanky boy. Holy Aura, same setup as normal. Mainly, one thing I do differently is I grab the crit chance here because you want as much crit as possible on this kind of setup. Also, as well as you can tell, I am at capped crit right now, so you just want to do whatever you can to get capped crit. Lunge, most important note in lunge is Dawn Charge. This makes it so that when you're in monos, you're not leeching life, which is some of the time, by the way, in your monos and you're running through. Dawn Charge just heals you for 40% of your missing health, and you have a very large HP pool, so you get to leverage that with Dawn Charge. So for instance, if you're at like 50% life, right, and you got a Dawn Charge, you would gain about, it'd be like 40% of 50%. That'd be about like 20% life. And then at that point, you would gain another 12%. So if you spammed both charges, you'd go from 50% life to 82% life. And that is damn good. That's pretty much it for the skills, though. Now, for, of course, the blessings here, we're going to talk about the blessings. Armor while channeling, best in slot. You're always channeling, might as well. Percentage armor from Herot, you know, make sure to get the 69% because that unlocks the ultra mega version, right? Critical strike avoidance because they removed all the critical strike avoidance bases from Sentinel, so you got to get it somewhere. I got lightning res here, crit multi here because we want damage. Eventually you could upgrade this. I did not because I was busy doing other things. Specifically trying to get armor while channeling from here. Now for passives, we'll talk about that real quick. 30 points in Sentinel, mainly because we want Blade Master, we want Valiant Charge, and we want Armor Clad. Everything else is filler. Of course, we want the dual wield node. 5 points in Abyssal Endurance so that we can grab Volatile Reversal. Like I said, if you do not have a Bleeding Heart, this is where you put points into World Eater so that you can make up for that fact, but Bleeding Heart definitely saves us some points. And here, 8 points in Defiance for that Ellie res, 10 points in Valor for that HP. We grab Raya's Strength. That's mainly because we no longer needed the Necrotic Res from Holy Icon because of our gearing. So we were able to get a bunch of increased damage from Raya's Strength. If you don't know, this is 4% increased damage per strength. So this is 72% increased damage for us on top of giving us 32% increased armor. This node, I used to think it was bad, but it's significantly better than I thought it was when you are min-maxing. 8 points into Faith Armor. This on top of the crit strike avoidance blessing is enough to cap you, and of course increase armor is great. Eventually you'd max out prayer aegis, but for some reason my build bugged out while leveling, and EHG stole a few passive points from me, so I'm still missing a few. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Then 7 points of Righteous Firebrand, 14 flat on recent spellcast. Great, because we're always casting spells, because sigils, reversal, stuff like that. 12 points of Reverence Duality, the increased life is great. And then 12 points in the Light of Rye for the movement speed and the fire damage. You specifically want the movement speed, right? All that's wonderful and great. Now for gearing here, the helmet here, instead of that strength, you can go for channel cost. That'd be great. But this helmet base is great. Most of the mods on it are fine. Something similar to this would do great. Just get that channel cost in there. Even a tier 1 sealed channel cost would go a long way. Bleeding Heart, like I said, if you don't have a Bleeding Heart, you could use any other amulet with these kind of stats. Get some crit multi, fire damage, fire pin, life, res, frailty, stuff like that. Although I really like the Jade amulet base for damage, but if you're having problems with dots, which I very much was, you can run an Oracle amulet instead if you manage to get one with good rolls. Scepter here. I have absolute overkill on my scepter. You only need a tier 5 obsidian scepter with like the melee crit chance. The attack speed's also overkill. All of this thing is overkill. Mainly you just need the flat fire and the melee crit. And of course you can get shred armor on hit as well, which is very important on the suffix, because that means that you don't have to go for shred armor on hit idols. Now, Irene, like I said, would have been best in slot even without the attack speed. Do I need to say more? +4 to Warpath chest. This is on a bad base. You want the Dawn chest plate, the one that gives us a bunch of flat armor, so we're even tankier. But this works because it has +4 to Warpath on it, has a bunch of strength on it, and HP. So I'm happy with it. Like I said, you can get away with a +3. I would heavily suggest getting a +3 at least. Ring, I went with for double copper ring. So I got lucky. I dropped something like this, and I mirrored it so that I have 2 of them, mainly because I wanted the life, I wanted the crit, and I wanted the mana regen. The reason why I want the mana regen is so that in those partial times when you're in the mono, when you're killing bosses and stuff, right? If you just stop channeling for a second, bam, you're back at full mana. So those are quality of life stats. If you get minus channel costs on the helmet, you don't actually need these, and you can go for fire damage instead. But copper rings are very good for capping your crit. If you want to go faster, use movement speed rings. If you want to leech more without a bleeding heart, you can run a Siphon of Anguish. But I got really lucky with my copper ring luck. Belt, instead of that minion damage, we want fire damage. And probably cooldown. I'm not entirely sure. You probably want cooldown. I haven't tested it too much. Having life is great. Now, for gloves, mainly you want exalted melee attack speed and crit. Everything else doesn't matter. You could have life on it, whatever. Literally doesn't matter. You specifically want exalted melee attack speed because that's where a large chunk of it comes from. Boots, cooldown, life, strength, the usual. This is like the perfect pair of boots. Of course, I got lucky. You don't actually need that hybrid health, but like the cooldown is great because it makes it so that your reversal is in lower cooldown, so you have more consistency. Then for the relic, crit, fire damage, res, and then of course on this base specifically, because it has that -3 mana cost, and that will apply to the channel cost. Now for idols, of course, Throne of Ambition, the buff to this is great for this build because we have plenty of increased damage, so we didn't need it before. 40% more damage is amazing. Then all the other idols are just res idols, and then of course, shred idols. Eventually what you want to do, probably, once you get some stuff fixed with your blessings and your reses and all that, you can dump all these idols and go for HP idols instead, right? And just be a big chonker. And at that point, you will be tankier than the Void Knight version, which is one of the benefits of the Paladin version, is you will be significantly tankier than your Void Knight brethren by several magnitudes, at least versus specifically versus hit damage. Against dots, it's like still up in the air, right? Because VK has better leech. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the character in game. you have any questions, you can leave them down below, or you can also join my Discord as well. With all that being said, I think that's it for the character. Bye, guys.